Angela wiped her hands on her apron and let out a long sigh. The diner was quiet for the moment, only the hum of the old refrigerator and the faint clatter of dishes from the kitchen breaking the silence. She had been working at this small diner for nearly 10 years now, and every day felt like a long struggle. Yet she had never complained. It was the only job she could find that allowed her to take care of her young son, Jamal, while still earning a small income to pay the bills. Angela had always been a person who believed in kindness, even when life had given her little reason to be hopeful. Her life was far from easy. She had lost her husband in a car accident several years ago, leaving her alone to raise Jamal. They lived in a small apartment above a noisy laundromat, and the rent was barely affordable with her minimum wage salary. Some days, she skipped meals just to make sure Jamal had enough to eat. Some days, she had to choose between paying the electricity bill or buying groceries. Life was a constant balancing act, and yet she faced it all with patience, strength, and a smile that she wore like armor. That evening, the winter wind blew fiercely outside, rattling the windows of the diner. The neon sign outside flickered, casting red and blue shadows across the empty tables. Angela was wiping down the counters and arranging the menus when the bell above the door jingled. She looked up and saw two children walking in, shivering in the cold. They could not have been older than 10 or 11. Their clothes were worn and torn, their shoes scuffed, and their small faces were pale and thin. They looked lost, as if they had wandered far from home and didn't know where to go. Angela felt a tug at her heart. She had seen hunger in many forms during her life, both in her own struggles and in the faces of those who walked into her diner. She noticed the way the children hesitated, glancing at the menu prices with nervous eyes. They did not ask for help. They didn't know how. Their small voices barely whispered, "How much for a plate of food?" Angela knelt down slightly to their level and smiled warmly. "Don't worry about money," she said softly. "Sit wherever you like. I'll bring you something to eat." The children looked up, surprised. One of them, a boy with dark curly hair, shook his head. "We don't have any money," he whispered, his voice almost breaking. Angela placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's okay. You're welcome here. Everyone deserves a meal." She didn't give them a choice. She went into the kitchen and began preparing 2 plates of hot food. She added extra portions without thinking twice, cutting pieces of bread thickly and scooping large portions of mashed potatoes and vegetables. She even placed a slice of apple pie on a small plate, knowing it would bring a little joy to their day. When she returned to the table, the children were sitting quietly, trying to shrink into themselves as if they hoped to be invisible. Angela placed the plates in front of them. "Eat up," she said gently. "You must be very hungry." The boy hesitated, glancing at Angela with suspicion and confusion. The girl, who had her hair tied back in a messy ponytail, whispered, "We can't." Angela shook her head. "Yes, you can. I insist." Her voice was soft, but there was no room for argument. Finally, the children began to eat, slowly at first, as if they couldn't believe someone would feed them without expecting anything in return. Their eyes widened at the taste of warm, filling food. For the first time that day, they felt safe and cared for. Angela watched them quietly, smiling to herself. She could see the hunger in their bodies, but more than that, she saw a hunger for love and kindness that many children never experienced. As they ate, Angela asked simple questions, trying to learn their names and where they lived. The boy's name was Marcus, and the girl was Tina. They didn't want to give many details about their home life, but Angela didn't push. She understood that some questions were too heavy for young shoulders. She just sat with them, making them feel human, seen, and valued. After a while, the children finished their plates. They looked at Angela, eyes wide, still hesitant but touched by her generosity. "Thank you," Marcus said quietly, almost afraid that saying it too loudly might make it disappear. Angela shook her head. "No need to thank me. I just want you to have something to eat. That's all. Promise me you'll come back when you're hungry again. You'll always have a seat here." The children nodded shyly. Before leaving, Tina looked up at Angela and whispered, "You're very kind. We won't forget this." Angela smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her heart despite the chill of the winter evening. She didn't know how much those words would mean to her in the years to come, but in that moment, she felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. Once the children left, Angela went back to her work. She wiped down the counters, refilled the coffee pot, and served the few remaining customers with her usual patience and care. She thought about the children and wondered if they had somewhere warm to sleep that night. She hoped they did. She knew life could be cruel, and she wished that kindness could protect them in ways she could not. Angela returned home late that night, her body aching from the long shift. Jamal was waiting for her in their small apartment, his homework spread out on the table. She hugged him tightly, holding him close as if trying to shield him from the world's hardships. Even after everything she had done that day, her heart still felt heavy, filled with the weight of responsibilities and dreams deferred. Yet, despite the exhaustion and the worry, Angela felt a quiet sense of pride. She had done what she could for those two children, and that act of compassion had reminded her why she never gave up, why she kept moving forward despite the obstacles. Life might be hard, but small moments of kindness could make it brighter not just for others, but for herself as well. That night, as she lay in bed, Angela thought about the children, about their little faces, their hesitant smiles, and the way their eyes had lit up at a warm meal. She didn't know it yet, but that simple act would become a turning point, a seed planted in the hearts of Marcus and Tina that would one day grow into something powerful. She had no idea that the children would remember her forever, that they would work tirelessly to succeed, inspired by the generosity she had shown without expectation. Angela drifted off to sleep with a sense of quiet hope. The world was harsh and unfair, and her struggles were far from over, but she carried within her a small, unbreakable truth: kindness matters. Even a single act can ripple across time, touching lives in ways no one can predict. And somewhere in the city, two young children were carrying a memory of warmth, a memory of a stranger who had shown them that compassion could exist even in the hardest of places. As the first light of dawn began to peek through the window of her small apartment, Angela prepared herself for another long day. She knew she would face exhaustion, low wages, and endless challenges. But she also knew that every plate she served, every smile she shared, and every small act of kindness had meaning. And though she could not see the future, she trusted that her simple choice to help those hungry children that cold evening would one day create a story worth telling, a story of hope, transformation, and the enduring power of compassion. Years passed, and life continued its steady, often harsh rhythm for Angela. The small diner where she had shown kindness to two starving children became a familiar landscape of routine struggle and fleeting satisfaction. Her shifts grew longer as she took on extra hours whenever the manager allowed it, just to keep the bills paid. Every day was a challenge, every night a quiet struggle. Despite all of it, Angela kept her head high and her heart open, determined to provide the best life she could for her son, Jamal. Angela's son had grown into a bright and curious boy, full of questions about the world and a desire to learn as much as he could. She encouraged his curiosity and worked tirelessly to make sure he never went without an education. Even though money was tight, Angela always made room for books, pencils, and anything that could help Jamal explore his imagination. She often reminded him that kindness mattered more than anything else in life, sharing stories of the small ways people could make a difference in someone else's day. The diner remained a place of both comfort and challenge. Angela had come to know the regular customers by name: the retired man who always ordered black coffee and shared stories of his youth, the single mother who stopped by for a quick lunch, and the young couple who came in on weekends. Each interaction was small, almost mundane, but Angela cherished them. She found meaning in connecting with others, in offering a smile and a warm meal, even when her own stomach ached and her feet were sore. Despite her resilience, life did not become easier. Rent continued to rise, bills piled up, and unexpected medical expenses loomed like dark clouds. Angela often found herself lying awake at night, calculating numbers in her head, wondering how she would make it through the month. Still, she refused to let despair take hold. Her guiding principle was simple: help others when you can, and hold on to hope that good deeds matter, even when the world seems unfair. Meanwhile, the two children she had helped that long ago evening, Marcus and Tina, were quietly carrying the memory of her kindness through the years. They never forgot the warmth of the woman who had treated them like human beings when the world around them seemed indifferent. That night in the diner had sparked something within them, a sense that there was hope and goodness even in the darkest times. Marcus threw himself into his studies with determination. He had seen too much hunger, too much struggle, and he was determined not to live a life constrained by poverty. He worked part-time jobs after school, from delivering newspapers to helping at local stores, always careful to balance work with education. Tina, his younger sister, showed the same determination. She loved learning and dreamed of making a difference in the world, inspired by the kindness she had once received. Both of them shared stories of Angela's generosity with each other, remembering her as a guiding light, a person who had believed in them when few others had. Back in the diner, Angela faced her own personal struggles. The manager had grown stricter over the years, complaining about small mistakes and showing little appreciation for her dedication. Customers sometimes tried to take advantage of her patience, leaving without paying or criticizing her service unfairly. Some days, Angela returned home feeling drained, wishing for a break, yet unable to imagine leaving her job. The diner was her livelihood, and quitting was never an option. Jamal noticed his mother's fatigue. He often offered to help around the apartment, bringing her tea or tidying up the living room. Angela smiled at his thoughtfulness, proud of the compassion he showed even at a young age. She tried to shield him from the full weight of their struggles, but she knew he understood more than she realized. Even in the quiet moments, when bills went unpaid and the fridge held little more than a few vegetables and bread, Angela held onto her belief that their perseverance and kindness would pay off one day. Life in the neighborhood remained challenging. The streets were busy, sometimes dangerous, and the community struggled with poverty, crime, and lack of opportunity. Angela often worried about the children growing up in such an environment, fearing that without guidance, they might fall into hardship. That was why she held so tightly to the belief that small acts of kindness mattered. They could inspire hope, even in the hardest places, and could change lives in ways that were not immediately visible. Years slipped by, marked by the routine of work, the small joys of family, and the constant worry of survival. Angela never forgot the two children who had once sat quietly in her diner. She wondered sometimes about their lives, hoping they were safe, happy, and well-fed. She never expected to see them again. The world had moved on, and Angela focused on her daily tasks, her care for Jamal, and the hope that life would bring better days. Marcus and Tina, however, never let go of the memory of Angela's kindness. They carried it with them through every challenge, every setback, and every success. When they faced moments of doubt, they remembered the warmth of the diner, the generosity of the stranger who had treated them with dignity and love. It became a guiding principle in their lives: when life gives you hardship, respond with determination and kindness. Marcus excelled in school, winning scholarships that allowed him to pursue higher education. He studied business and entrepreneurship, determined to create opportunities not just for himself but for others who had grown up in similar circumstances. Tina pursued education in social work and community service, driven by a desire to help children in need, inspired by the memory of the woman who had shown her that kindness could be life-changing. Back at the diner, Angela continued her routine. She served breakfast to early commuters, lunch to busy workers, and dinner to the few patrons who stayed late. Each day was tiring, but she found meaning in small gestures, refilling a coffee cup, sharing a kind word, or preparing a special dish for someone who looked hungry. She had learned over the years that life might not reward her immediately, but her efforts mattered in ways she could not see. Even in her own struggles, Angela never stopped believing in the goodness of people. She volunteered occasionally at the local community center, helped her neighbors when they were in need, and always made space in her heart for compassion. Though her life was full of challenges, she was determined to live with integrity, warmth, and generosity. One evening, after a particularly long and exhausting shift, Angela sat alone in the diner, sipping a cup of lukewarm coffee. She looked around at the empty tables and thought of Marcus and Tina, the children she had fed so long ago. She smiled to herself, imagining that somewhere, they might be safe and thriving. She could not have known that her small act of kindness would one day come back to her in ways she could never have imagined. Angela's story during these years was one of quiet endurance, perseverance, and hope. She faced hardship daily, yet she never lost sight of what truly mattered, caring for her son, showing kindness to others, and believing that good deeds, no matter how small, had meaning. Each day she reminded herself that even when life seemed unfair, even when her struggles felt overwhelming, the simple acts of compassion could ripple outward, touching lives and planting seeds of change that might take years to bloom. And somewhere in the city, Marcus and Tina were growing into adults who would one day make that memory a reality. Inspired by Angela's generosity, they were laying the foundation for a future filled with possibility, determination, and hope. They did not yet know how or when they would reconnect with the woman who had changed their lives with a single act of kindness, but they carried her in their hearts every day, letting her example guide their choices and ambitions. Angela, unaware of the impact she had made, continued her life quietly, serving meals with a smile, managing her household with care, and teaching Jamal the values she held dear. Her days were long, her nights filled with worry, but her heart remained full. She had learned that true strength was not measured by wealth, recognition, or status, but by the love and kindness one could give to others. And so, life moved forward, weaving together the stories of struggle, perseverance, and hope. Angela continued her work, never expecting anything in return, yet unknowingly shaping the future of two children who had once sat quietly in her diner, hungry and uncertain, and who would one day return to show her that the world remembers acts of genuine kindness, even after many years. Years went by, and life continued in its usual rhythm for Angela, filled with long hours at the diner, endless chores, and quiet struggles. She never imagined that the children she had once helped, Marcus and Tina, were growing up, always thinking about her, and planning ways to repay the kindness that had once saved their spirits. To Angela, they were just two small faces in a memory she rarely dwelled on, a brief encounter on a cold winter evening. Yet to Marcus and Tina, that moment had never left their hearts. By the time Marcus and Tina reached their early 20s, they had both achieved remarkable success in their own ways. Marcus had become a young entrepreneur, running a small but growing company that focused on community development projects. He wanted to help others escape the hardships that he and Tina had endured. He worked tirelessly, driven by a vision to create opportunities for children and families struggling to survive in difficult neighborhoods. Tina, on the other hand, had become a social worker, dedicating her life to helping children who faced hunger, neglect, and poverty. She was passionate, empathetic, and determined to make a difference in the world, inspired by the woman who had once shown her that small acts of kindness could change lives. Despite their busy lives, Marcus and Tina never forgot Angela. They often talked about her during family dinners or quiet moments after work. "She believed in us when no one else did," Tina would say, her voice filled with emotion. "She didn't just feed us. She made us feel human. That mattered more than anything." Marcus would nod, remembering the warmth of her smile, the gentle words she had spoken, and the way she had treated them with dignity and respect when the world had turned its back. One day, Marcus and Tina decided that it was time to find Angela. They wanted to express their gratitude in a way that could truly honor the impact she had had on their lives. They searched tirelessly through the city, asking questions, visiting diners and community centers, and following every lead they could find. Every step of the journey reminded them of how much her kindness had shaped their lives and how much they wanted to give back. Meanwhile, Angela's life continued as usual. She worked long hours at the diner, preparing meals, wiping counters, and serving customers with a smile. Her son, Jamal, had grown into a responsible young man, full of ambition and curiosity. Angela was proud of him, knowing that despite their struggles, she had raised him to be compassionate and hardworking. She still worried about money, bills, and the challenges of daily life, but she never lost her spirit of hope or her belief that small acts of kindness mattered. One rainy afternoon, as Angela was wiping down the counters during a slow shift, the bell above the diner door jingled. She looked up, expecting the usual customers, but what she saw made her heart stop. Standing in the doorway were two young adults, dressed neatly, their eyes bright with recognition and excitement. It took her a moment to realize who they were. "Angela?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with hope and a hint of nervousness. Angela's eyes widened. "Marcus?" "Tina," she whispered, unable to believe what she was seeing. Tina stepped forward, smiling warmly. "It's us," she said softly. "Do you remember us?" Angela's mind raced as she tried to process the moment. The children she had fed so many years ago had grown into adults standing right in front of her. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the cloth she had been using to wipe the counter. I can't believe it," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I never thought I'd see you again." Marcus and Tina approached her slowly, as if afraid that this moment might disappear if they moved too quickly. "We've never forgotten what you did for us," Marcus said, his eyes shining. "You fed us when we were hungry, and more than that, you treated us like people who mattered. You gave us hope when we had none. We wanted to come back and show you how much it meant to us." Angela felt tears welling up in her eyes. She had done what she thought was a simple act of kindness, never expecting anything in return. Yet here were the children, now grown, returning to express gratitude and love for something she had done without thinking twice. She shook her head, overwhelmed by emotion. I don't know what to say," she whispered. Tina reached out and gently took Angela's hands in hers. "You don't have to say anything. We just want you to know that your kindness changed our lives. It gave us hope, and it made us who we are today. You are part of our story, and now we want to be part of yours." Angela's heart swelled. She had spent years working tirelessly, often feeling unseen and unappreciated, yet in this moment, she realized that her efforts had not gone unnoticed. The simple act of feeding two starving children had created ripples that she could not have imagined, ripples that had grown into a tidal wave of gratitude, success, and love. Marcus and Tina had more than just kind words to share. They wanted to give Angela a gift that would truly change her life. Marcus explained that through his business and Tina's work in social services, they had managed to save enough money to help her in a way that would allow her to rest, relax, and live comfortably for the first time in years. Angela listened, unable to speak, as they described their plans, paying off her debts, helping her with her rent, and even supporting her in pursuing any dream she had put aside because of life's hardships. Angela's mind raced. She had never imagined such generosity, such love, or such gratitude. The thought that two children she had helped could now turn her life around was almost too much to process. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to find words, but none seemed adequate. I don't know what to say," she repeated, her voice trembling. "I only did what anyone would do. I just wanted you to eat." Marcus shook his head. It wasn't just about the food, Angela. It was about the way you treated us. You saw us when no one else did. You made us feel human, important, and worthy. That mattered more than anything. You didn't just feed us our bodies, you fed our spirits. And now, we want to feed yours. Angela could hardly believe it. She felt a warmth in her heart that she had never felt before. The struggles, the long hours, the exhaustion, they all seemed to fade away in this moment of joy, gratitude, and connection. She had spent years giving without expectation, and now, in a twist of fate, life was giving back to her in ways she had never dreamed possible. Tina gently guided Angela to a booth in the diner, and they all sat down together. They shared stories of their lives, the challenges they had faced, the successes they had achieved, and the ways Angela's kindness had shaped them. Angela listened, amazed at how far they had come, proud of the adults they had become, and humbled by the power of one simple act. The diner, which had always been a place of work and routine, now felt like a place of celebration and reunion. The warmth of the room, the gentle hum of the coffee machines, and the soft clatter of dishes became a backdrop to a moment that Angela would remember for the rest of her life. She realized that her life, full of struggle and quiet perseverance, had created a ripple effect that had come back to her in the most beautiful way imaginable. By the end of that afternoon, Angela felt a sense of fulfillment she had never known. Marcus and Tina had not only reunited with her, they had shown her that the world remembers acts of kindness, even years later, and that compassion can return in ways that surpass imagination. Angela understood now that her life, though full of challenges, had meaning and purpose beyond what she could have imagined. As they left the diner that evening, Angela felt a new sense of hope and possibility. The children she had once helped were now young adults who had transformed their own lives and, in doing so, had transformed hers. She realized that every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to create extraordinary change, often in ways that are not immediately visible. Angela returned home that night with Jamal, her heart full and her spirit renewed. She knew that life would still bring challenges, but she also knew that she was not alone. The love and gratitude of Marcus and Tina, the memory of her own perseverance, and the knowledge that her small acts had created ripples of change would carry her forward. For Angela, that day marked the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter of hope, recognition, and joy. She had lived years of quiet struggle, but now she understood that every moment of kindness she had offered had mattered, and that the world has a way of returning the goodness that is given without expectation. And somewhere deep in her heart, Angela knew that this reunion was only the beginning. Marcus and Tina would continue to be part of her life, and together, they would create more stories of compassion, generosity, and transformation, proof that one simple act of kindness can change lives forever. After that unforgettable reunion at the diner, Angela's life began to change in ways she had never imagined. The connection she had re-established with Marcus and Tina brought a new energy into her days. For the first time in years, she felt a deep sense of joy and purpose, not just from helping others, but from realizing that her own life mattered and that her struggles had created a meaningful legacy. Marcus and Tina were determined to help her, but they also wanted her to have a voice in shaping how her life would change. They sat down with Angela and carefully listened to her dreams, her desires, and the things she had always wanted but had put aside because of financial struggles or everyday responsibilities. Angela shared small dreams at first, things like traveling to a nearby city she had never visited, buying a new computer so she could explore writing, and enrolling in a cooking class to refine her already impressive skills. She also hesitated to speak of the bigger dreams she thought were impossible, like owning her own small cafe or starting a program to feed children in need. Tina and Marcus encouraged her to dream freely. "Angela," Tina said gently, "there's nothing too small or too big. You've done so much for us and others. Now it's your turn to have what you want. We'll help you." The first step was practical. Marcus helped Angela pay off her debts, clear overdue bills, and secure a small, comfortable apartment in a safe neighborhood. It was the first time in years that she didn't have to worry about whether the lights would be turned off or if she could afford groceries for the week. The feeling of relief was overwhelming. She had lived for so long in a constant state of worry and exhaustion that this sudden stability almost felt unreal. But as she looked around her new apartment, decorated with simple yet thoughtful touches from Marcus and Tina, she began to believe that life could hold happiness and security for her too. Once her basic needs were met, Angela started exploring the dreams she had put aside for so long. She signed up for the cooking class she had always wanted to attend. On the first day, she walked into the small, sunlit classroom, her heart pounding with excitement. For years, she had cooked countless meals at the diner, but this time, it was different. She was learning for herself, not for work or survival, and the joy of learning reignited a passion she had nearly forgotten. In the evenings, Angela began writing in a notebook she had received from Tina. She wrote about her life, her struggles, her hopes, and her small acts of kindness. She wrote about the day she had met Marcus and Tina and how that moment had changed her life, though she hadn't realized it at the time. Writing became a form of therapy and self-expression, and slowly, Angela started to see her own story as something beautiful, meaningful, and worth sharing. Meanwhile, Marcus and Tina were planning a bigger surprise. They knew that Angela had always cared deeply for children in need, and they wanted to give her a chance to continue that work on a larger scale. With Marcus's business connections and Tina's social work experience, they created a small foundation in Angela's name. The foundation's mission was simple: to provide meals, supplies, and opportunities to children who were struggling, just as Angela had helped them years ago. Angela was overwhelmed when she first learned about the foundation. She had never considered that her small acts could inspire something so large and impactful. I I don't know what to say," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I only ever wanted to help a few children, not this." Marcus shook his head. "Angela, it's exactly because of your heart that this is possible. You showed us what kindness looks like. Now, your kindness can touch thousands of children." The following months were busy but fulfilling. Angela became deeply involved in the foundation, meeting children, visiting schools, and personally helping families who needed support. She found that the joy of helping others now was amplified because she was doing it with resources, support, and a network that could reach farther than she ever could alone. The smile on a child's face when receiving a meal or a new school bag reminded her of the hungry faces of Marcus and Tina years ago, and the memory filled her with pride and happiness. Angela also began to enjoy life in ways she had never allowed herself before. She visited nearby cities, attended cultural events, and tried new hobbies. She even started a small blog where she shared her experiences, lessons, and stories of kindness. People began reading her posts and reaching out, inspired by her journey and her philosophy that small acts of love and compassion can ripple through lives in ways we may never fully understand. Her relationship with Jamal, her son, also grew stronger. With financial pressures eased, Angela was able to spend more quality time with him. They cooked together, laughed together, and shared their dreams. Jamal was inspired by his mother's resilience and kindness, and he began to see her not only as a parent but as a mentor and a role model. Angela felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that she had raised a young man with the values of empathy, compassion, and hard work. One afternoon, Angela received an invitation to speak at a local community event about her experiences and the importance of helping children in need. She was nervous at first, but Marcus and Tina encouraged her. "You have a story that can inspire others," Marcus said. "Your story shows that one person's kindness can change lives forever. People need to hear it." The day of the event, Angela stood on the stage, looking out at the audience of community members, educators, and local leaders. She spoke with honesty and emotion, sharing her life story, her struggles, and the pivotal moment when she had fed Marcus and Tina. She explained how small acts of kindness could ripple into lives in ways that are often invisible but deeply transformative. As she spoke, Angela noticed Marcus and Tina sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. Their presence reminded her of the circle of gratitude and love that had begun years ago in a small diner. The audience responded with tears, applause, and heartfelt messages afterward. Angela felt a new sense of confidence and purpose. She realized that her life, which she had once thought was ordinary and full of hardship, had become extraordinary because of her heart, her resilience, and her willingness to care for others. Over the next several months, the foundation grew. With Angela at the heart of it, thousands of children received food, school supplies, and mentorship programs. Local businesses partnered to support the initiative, inspired by Angela's story and the authenticity of her mission. Angela's life was no longer just about survival or day-to-day struggles, it had become a story of hope, empowerment, and the tangible impact of kindness. Angela also built lasting friendships and connections through her work. People who had once been strangers became allies, collaborators, and friends. The network she created wasn't just about resources, it was about love, empathy, and shared humanity. Angela found herself surrounded by people who cared about the same things she did, people who believed in making the world a better place for children and families. Despite all these changes, Angela remained humble and grounded. She continued to work in her cooking classes, maintain her apartment, and enjoy quiet moments of reflection. But she did so with a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her life had meaning far beyond what she had ever imagined. She had learned that acts of kindness, no matter how small, can create waves that transform not only others' lives but one's own as well. One evening, Angela sat by her window, looking out at the city lights. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, from a hard-working waitress helping two hungry children to a respected community leader whose foundation was changing lives. She thought about Marcus and Tina, whose lives had inspired hers as much as hers had inspired theirs. She felt grateful for the struggles, the lessons, and the unexpected reunions that had shaped her journey. Angela realized that the world is full of opportunities to give and receive kindness, often in ways that we cannot predict. She understood that her small act of feeding two starving children had sparked a chain of events that transformed not just the lives of Marcus and Tina, but her own as well. And in that moment, she felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that the circle of love and compassion she had started would continue, touching lives for generations to come. Time passed, and Angela's life continued to transform in ways she had never dreamed possible. The foundation she now led in her name had grown beyond her expectations, reaching hundreds of children and families who were struggling. The small act of kindness she had offered years ago, feeding Marcus and Tina, had now blossomed into a movement of hope, generosity, and love. Angela had gone from being a waitress with little means to a woman whose influence was felt far beyond her neighborhood. Despite all the changes, Angela remained humble and grounded. She never forgot the days when she had worried about rent or whether she would have enough money for groceries. Those experiences, she realized, had shaped her heart and taught her the value of empathy. She often shared these lessons with the children she helped, reminding them that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple out to change the world. One morning, Angela received a call from a local news station. They had heard about her story, her foundation, and her incredible journey from a simple waitress to a respected community leader. They wanted to feature her in a special program about people making a difference in the lives of children. Angela was nervous but agreed. When the crew arrived, she shared her story just as she had done at the community event, speaking with honesty, humility, and a deep passion for helping others. The program aired that evening, and the response was overwhelming. Donations poured in, not just to support the foundation, but to start similar initiatives in other cities. Angela received letters from families thanking her for the inspiration, and from children who had been directly helped by her foundation. Marcus and Tina sent messages too, proud and emotional, reminding Angela how much she had changed their lives years ago and how her actions continued to touch people she had never even met. With the newfound attention, Angela was able to expand the foundation's reach even further. She hired a small team of staff and volunteers who shared her vision, and together they started community kitchens, mentorship programs, and educational workshops. Angela also partnered with local schools to ensure that no child went hungry during the weekends and holidays. Her life had become a whirlwind of activity, but each moment was filled with purpose and meaning. One afternoon, while visiting a school to deliver supplies, Angela met a young girl named Lila. Lila reminded her so much of Marcus and Tina when they were children, hungry, timid, and struggling to find hope. Lila had a quiet strength about her, but her circumstances made her hesitant to believe in a better future. Angela knelt down and spoke to her gently, offering words of encouragement and handing her a backpack filled with books and snacks. "Angela, why are you helping me?" Lila asked, her voice soft and uncertain. Angela smiled warmly, placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Because someone helped me once, and it changed my life. And I want to do the same for you. You have the power to make your life beautiful, Lila, just like I did." The girl's eyes sparkled with hope, and Angela realized that her mission was far from over. Each child she touched was a chance to create another ripple of change, just like Marcus and Tina had unknowingly created in her life so many years ago. Meanwhile, Angela continued to nurture her own personal growth. She had always loved cooking, and she now had the time and resources to explore it fully. She opened a small cafe next to the foundation's office, combining her two passions, feeding people and creating a welcoming space for community gatherings. The cafe became a hub for volunteers, families, and children, where everyone felt valued and cared for. It was modest, warm, and filled with laughter, a reflection of Angela's heart. Through all of this, Jamal grew into a young man who shared his mother's values. He often helped at the foundation, organizing events, mentoring younger children, and learning the importance of compassion firsthand. Angela watched him with pride, realizing that the lessons she had imparted to him would continue to shape the next generation. Her role as a mother, mentor, and leader all blended into a life she could never have imagined when she was serving tables and struggling to make ends meet. The biggest surprise came one evening when Marcus and Tina visited Angela at the cafe. They had been working tirelessly in their own careers, but they never forgot the woman who had fed them when they had nothing. They came not only to visit but to present Angela with a gift, a small plaque engraved with the words, "To Angela, who fed us when we were hungry and changed our lives forever. Your kindness echoes through generations." Angela was speechless. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged Marcus and Tina tightly. You didn't have to do this," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Marcus smiled gently. "Angela, this is more than just a gift. It's a reminder that your small act of love started something incredible. You saved us once, and now you're saving so many others. We just wanted you to know that your life has meaning beyond what you can imagine." In that moment, Angela understood the true power of kindness. It wasn't about recognition or reward, it was about the lasting impact one person could have on the world. Her heart swelled with gratitude, love, and a sense of fulfillment she had never known before. Over the next few years, Angela's life continued to flourish. The foundation reached new heights, feeding thousands of children, supporting struggling families, and inspiring other communities to take action. Angela received invitations to speak at conferences, write articles, and share her story with wider audiences, but she remained humble, always emphasizing that it was the small acts of everyday kindness that truly mattered. Her cafe became a symbol of community and hope. People from all walks of life came to enjoy meals, attend workshops, or simply find a place where they felt welcome. Angela often cooked alongside her staff, sharing recipes, laughter, and stories with anyone who entered. The cafe wasn't just a business, it was a home for people seeking connection, nourishment, and encouragement. Angela also found personal happiness. She developed close friendships with volunteers, neighbors, and community leaders who supported her mission. She enjoyed quiet evenings with Jamal, reflecting on life and dreaming about the future. She felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that she had overcome hardships, turned her struggles into purpose, and created a life filled with meaning, love, and hope. One day, while visiting a school with the foundation, Angela watched a group of children enjoying a meal she had helped provide. Their laughter and joy reminded her of Marcus and Tina years ago, the hungry children she had first helped. She realized that her journey had come full circle. From feeding 2 starving kids in a small diner to feeding hundreds of children across the city, Angela's life had been shaped by compassion, perseverance, and the belief that one person can make a difference. As she looked around at the smiling faces, Angela felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had lived a life of service, faced challenges with courage, and embraced opportunities for growth and change. She had learned that kindness is not just a momentary act, but a lifelong commitment that can transform lives in ways we often cannot predict. And in the quiet moments, when Angela reflected on the journey that had brought her here, she felt a deep, enduring gratitude. Gratitude for the struggles that had strengthened her, for Marcus and Tina who had reminded her of the power of compassion, and for the countless children and families whose lives she had touched. She realized that her story wasn't just about her, it was about the endless ripple effect of love, generosity, and human connection. Angela's life had been turned around in ways she had never imagined. The small act of feeding 2 hungry children had grown into a legacy of hope, community, and transformation. And as she stood in her cafe, watching children laugh, families connect, and volunteers work tirelessly to make the world a better place, Angela knew one thing for certain: kindness always comes back, often in ways far greater than we can imagine, and a single act can change the world not just for others, but for ourselves as well. Angela had started as a simple waitress with a kind heart, and she had become a beacon of hope for countless lives. Her story would continue to inspire generations, proving that love, compassion, and selfless acts have the power to transform the world, one life at a time.